So we're working on pronouns, and I'm kind of going a little bit out of order than I usually do, but I think it'll still be okay. I'm trying to hitting the highlights of what would be on the SAT for you and what you need to know about pronouns to do well in the SAT. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look, particularly at the ones that we use the most, but we sometimes misuse them the most. And so we're taking a look at just something we call grammar commandment number 13. If Moses gave us 13 commandments, which is that the proper uses of pronouns shall be we, which I know it doesn't sound like a correct to say something like shall be we, but that is exactly correct. So don't doubt Moses. So basic introduction into pronouns. So we know pronouns. We've studied pronouns before in English class. So pronouns are traditionally defined as words that stand in for nouns. But a better name that our author actually uses in her textbook is she calls them pronominals. And the reason she calls them that is because, well, yes, it could stand in for a noun, but we also know that a noun doesn't necessarily have to always be literally a noun. It could be something else. And so it can actually stand in for any kind of nominal phrase, which, as long as it's referring to its antecedent, would still qualify it as being a pronoun. That sounds really fancy and stupid. So let me show you what I mean. So if I said the maple bacon donut at Byler's Donuts is delicious, and if I want to take this entire nominal phrase, which we would call like a noun phrase or a nominal phrase, of the maple bacon donut at Byler's Donuts, if I want to take all those words and simply replace it with one single word, I could. I could just simply say, it is delicious. And if I said, well, what is it referring to? You could say, wasn't it referring to donut? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm not really saying donut is delicious. I'm saying specifically the maple bacon donut at Byler's Donuts. That specific donut is delicious. And so for that reason, I think it's kind of weird for us to think that a single pronoun like it is referring to a single noun. Oftentimes it's referring to something much broader. And so it's kind of branching out from how we normally think about pronouns. Not that any of us really normally think about pronouns anyway. Another one to think about is we always think about how it stands in for something which is nominal or some kind of noun, but a pronoun actually can replace other nominals. It can replace verbs. It can replace clauses. It has a lot more flexibility to it. And the reason that I teach it last in our class, as well as why it's at the very end of our textbook, is because you have to understand a lot of grammar to understand pronouns. They're actually more complicated than they think. So if I said the policeman warned Rowan to drive the speed limit, all right, no big deal. And what if I took this infinitive phrase, which is to drive the speed limit, and I replaced it with a pronoun? What if I said, he told Owen that too? Well, the word that is actually replacing a verb or a verb phrase. He told Owen to drive the speed limit too. And so now I realize, wow, I guess the pronoun that is not replacing a noun, it's actually replacing a verb or an entire verb phrase. So once again, just simply establishing the fact that pronouns are a little more complicated than they come across as. If I said how you spend your time is none of my business, I could take this clause, which is how you spend your time, which is like a little miniature sentence, has both a subject and a verb to it. I can actually take that little miniature sentence and replace it with a pronoun again. I could say, that is none of my business, or it is none of my business. So once again, just kind of thinking outside the box on how we traditionally look at pronouns. So today I want to take a look at what we call the personal pronouns, something you probably come across in your foreign language classes, and I know you know them already. So I want to hit the ones that are on the SAT most frequently. So if you're going to take some notes today, here are some slides I want to make sure you capture. So feel free to pause the video and capture the notes before you move on with your video. So the first type of a personal pronoun is based off of what we call a case or a type. So we're going to call these the nominative pronouns. Now, if you take German class, sometimes we'll refer to them as the subjective case pronouns. I'm cool with that. So nominative or subjective. Usually those of us who take Spanish know it as nominative case. So a pronoun, let's see if I can get my pointer to show up here. There he is. So we break them down into both singular, which is this column here. These are all singular, and these are plural over here. And we also break them down in terms of person. So this is what we call the first person pronouns. So sometimes in writings, I'll say, hey, no first person pronouns. Or I'll say, hey, no second person pronouns. And then down here, these are your third person pronouns. So I, you, she, he, and it. These are all our singular pronouns. And then we, you, and they. But these are all we call the subjective or the nominative case pronouns. Now, to add to this, we also have what we call the objective case pronouns. So speaking in English and having taken Spanish, I refer to it as the objective case. Those of you who take German, you would recognize this as being what we call the accusative case. Germans also have another one called the dative case because they're weird, and they have pronouns just for direct objects and they have pronouns just for indirect objects, and that's just how the Germans rule. So What we have here then is we have, once again, a column of singular pronouns. We have a column of plural pronouns. And once again, we break them down into first person, second person, and third person. So the objective case pronouns are the words me, you, her, him, and it, us, you, and them. All right, so you should pause the video, make sure you capture these. Nothing groundbreaking going on here, but just make sure you understand that this is the two groups that we're going to look at, and then we're going to take a look at them individually. So if we talk about the subjective or the nominative case pronouns, we have to understand when we use them. And that's really the whole purpose of today, is to be understanding when we use them. So we use these anytime we're making subjects, which makes sense. We would use the word I as a subject. We use the word he as a subject. We would also use them anytime we create a pattern 3 or a pattern 5, which is what we would call a subject complement or a predicate nominative. That's where it gets a little tricky because it doesn't really sound right. And pronouns are one of those pronouns are one of those grammar things that the way we talk and the way we write are completely different. So if I said Bryce and I or Bryce and me, hopefully we would all say Bryce and I. We'd use the word I because I is a subject. And so whether you realize it or not, you're using the word I because you need a subject, because I is part of the subject, because Bryce and I are sharing the subject. And there, what's really going on in your brain, I guess, is you're using the word I because you're like, well, I have a subject. I need a subject pronoun. So what's my option for a subject pronoun? Well, I get to use any of these nominative or subjective case pronouns. The reason why some people like to call them subjective case is because it has the word subject in there. It's kind of fun. And people think of the subject complement because it's subjective. I call it a predicate nominative for pattern 3 and pattern 5. That's why I call it a nominative case pronoun. Who cares? Anyway, so most of us would all agree that we would say Bryce and I, not Bryce and me. And we would say, well, Bryce and I were entranced by the smell of donuts at the bakery, and we or us began to drool uncontrollably. And your natural gut would say use the word we because, once again, it's a subject. We know there's multiple subjects in a sentence, and we is the subject of the back half of the sentence with this verb began. And so that's pretty easy. We'd say I and we. And once again, what's going on inside your brain is you recognize that you need a subject, so you chose a pronoun which does a subject's job. Now, if I said, if you are looking for the ones who ate the last hostess fruit pie, this is she or this is her. All right, let's read it again one more time in English. If you're looking for the one, rather, who ate the last hostess fruit pie, this is she or this is her. Well, this one does not necessarily roll off the tongue as smoothly as the previous sentence. Well, I have to think about what's going on in the sentence. So if I look back here, which says this is she or this is her, what's happening is I already have a subject. The verb is has a subject, which is the word this. So it comes after a verb, but it comes after a to be verb. And if you look up on the wall, you would see that when we follow a to be verb or we follow a linking verb, we create a pattern 3 or a pattern 5. So anytime I come across a to be verb or a linking verb, when I follow it, I'm looking for the subject complement, or what we would call the predicate nominative. So in my brain says, well, I need to find something which fits in the position of a predicate nominative or a subject complement. And the only choices I have would have to be she if I had the choice between she and her. So the answer would be, this is she. Sounds really formal. And this is where you have to kind of ignore your grammar gut, because your grammar gut would be dead wrong, because we don't talk this way. Most of us would say this is her, but it's not correct, because I'm looking for something which fills in the position of a subject complement. And that's why I have to use one of these first pronouns that we have, the subjective or the nominative case pronouns have to fit into that position. So our goal today is simply to kind of really focus on what position's open and then choose the right pronoun. Don't go with what your gut says. Sometimes think with your head. Another example, if I said, I've had a lot of English teachers over the years, and Mr. Marsh is not as smart as they or not as smart as them. That's definitely true. In this case, I can see that I have this Mr. Marsh is not as smart as, and here's this word as, which is on our list of prepositions, but really the word as is almost never a preposition. So I'm not sure why it's on the list. We know the word as is a comparison word, which oftentimes creates what we call the elliptical clause, something we did in our previous unit. So if we think about what words we're actually filling in, we're saying Mr. Marsh is not as smart as, yes, it is an elliptical clause. Thank you, Moses. We'd say Mr. Marsh is not as smart as they or them are smart. And we're like, oh, I see this now. I realize as elliptical that basically our smart is looking for a subject. And if I'm looking for a subject means I have to use a nominative case or a subjective case pronoun. And that's why we naturally use the word they. Mr. Marsh is not as smart as they are smart. It looks like it's the prepositional phrase, but it's not. It's the subject of the elliptical. So be careful of ellipticals. Now, I'll pause, make sure, or you pause the video, make sure you capture any of these notes that sound good to you, because sometimes it doesn't always stick the first time. Now, when I go to the second one we want to look at today, or which we call objective or accusative case pronouns, well, these guys, I like calling it objective case. No offense to the Germans, but the reason I like calling it objective case is because it has the word object in there. And if I think about the word object, I'll always get this right. So objective case pronouns we rarely ever get wrong. We speak them correctly, so therefore we write them correctly. There's only one small possible error that I'll show to you. All right, so when we use direct objects, we get to use the objective case pronoun. If we have indirect objects, we use the objective case pronoun. If we have objective complements, if you look up on the wall, that'd be pattern 10. That would be, once again, an objective case pronoun would fit there. And then if we have the object of a preposition, which can happen in any of the 10 sentence patterns, we would still, once again, use the objective case pronoun. So if I said something like, this incident is just between we or just between us, well, my grammar gut would kick in and I would be right in following my grammar gut, but I want to use my grammar brain and think, well, what's the reason that I'm going to use the word us? It's a prepositional phrase. If I look at my list of prepositions, between is a preposition, so it's looking for its object of a preposition. So I'd say it's between us. Like I said, we don't mess these up. We know how to use a direct object, indirect object, or objective complement. We use them all correctly with the pronouns. It's the object of the preposition that we sometimes mess up on. It's not like this. Most of us would always say this incident is just between us. None of us would probably say just between we. Here's the one time we might make an error. So hold on to your seats. If I said this incident is just between you and I or you and me, all I've done is I've taken that word we or us and I've simply split it into two separate words. But those two words are still pronouns, and those two words are still objective case pronouns because they're still objects of preposition. So if I consult my list and think, okay, what are my objective case pronouns? I can say this incident is just between you and me, because me is on my list. I is a subject pronoun. Me is an object pronoun. And so anytime I split open my prepositional phrase, I just find that sometimes I think we almost convince ourselves that it sounds more formal, more fancy to say this incident is just between you and I, which is really, really wrong. And so we'd say, well, it's just between you and me. Okay. So we're going to practice. I'm going to change my screen here just for a second. All right. So maybe, there we go. So on Google Docs, you have a little worksheet. It looks like this. If you want to follow along your Google Doc while I'm doing this video, if you want to split screen it, I'm not sure how you do that, but if you want to, you can. I'm simply going to work my way through these 6 sentences and simply talk about why they're right or why they're wrong and why we're choosing what we're choosing before we kind of get into some practice. All right, so once again, if you need to go back to Schoology and pause the video and find this little Google Doc, go for it. If you just want to take notes or just want to listen, that's also okay. All right, so here I go. I'm going to go back to my screen of where I was, and we'll start up this show again. All right, so here's our first one. So imagine someone's calling a girl named Shaneiqua. All right, so the phone rings. Ring, ring, ring. Hello, is Shaneiqua there? Yeah, this is she. That's just how I imagine Shaneiqua sounds. And if Shaneiqua actually said this is she, Shaneiqua, you would be right. You're exactly right, Shaneiqua, because this is a nominative case pronoun. We're saying this is she. It follows a to be verb, and therefore I get to use the nominative case pronoun because it's basically serving as the predicate nominative. So if you're trying to keep track of these 6 sentences, I want to make sure that I either circle or highlight or write down that I'm using a nominative case pronoun, and the reason is the noun position. The reason is a predicate nominative. So on the quiz, I'll never ask you the reason why, and the SAT won't ask you the reason why, but if you know the reason why, just like we took on who versus whom, you're more likely to get the answer right. Right? It's being smart, no longer guessing. All right, so once again, following a to be verb, I get to use the same pronouns which start sentences are also the same pronouns that follow a to be verb. Let's do another one. All right, right now you're really thinking about my Shaneiqua voice. I always wish that I were as smart as her. All right, once again, you know this one. It's elliptical. We can even feel that it's elliptical. And so therefore we're like, wait a minute, it has to be the word she because it's a nominative case because I'm looking for a subject. And the reason I chose that nominative case pronoun she as opposed to the word her is I'm looking for a subject. I always wished I were as smart as she is smart. Third one. The Pittsburgh Steeler fans gave we Dallas Cowboy fans a pity party. That's probably going to be true. And I'm recording this on Monday more afternoon, and so the Pittsburgh Steelers have not played yet, but I'm pretty certain they're not going to make the playoffs. So there you go. Anyway, in this case, it says gave we Dallas Cowboy fans a pity party. Well, this is kind of a weird pattern 8, but that's what's happening here. You're saying the Steeler fans are giving a pity party to the Dallas Cowboy fans, or to we. Well, you wouldn't give it to we, you'd give it to us. It's an indirect object, really, is what's happening here. And so if it's an indirect object, you're giving a pity party to us, or to us, Dallas Cowboy fans, then you would use the object and therefore the objective case pronoun of us. Number 4, this is simply between her and I. Right? Once again, you know this one. It's a prepositional phrase. And so if I use a prepositional phrase, I need the object of the preposition. I need an objective case pronoun. I can't use the word I. That's for subjects. I have to say this is simply between her and me. It's an objective case pronoun. It's the object of preposition. 2 more to go. Number 5, the source of the potent cabbage smell was me, the Cabbage God. All right, I'll keep repeating the same errors on you today. All right, so here's that word was, which is a to be verb. If I follow a to be verb, I didn't make a direct object. I didn't make like a pattern 7. This is an old-fashioned pattern 3. And if it's a predicate nominative, I have to use the word I. And so it's a nominative case pronoun because I'm looking for a nominative position. I'm looking for a predicate nominative. So I have to say the source was I. And lastly, my personal favorite. Have you seen my friends? I've lost them. Oh, wait, that's they over there. And that's actually correct. As weird as it is, it's correct to say that's they over there. All right, think about the logic of it. You're saying that is they. Let's see if I bring up my little pen or my cursor or my highlighter. Here we go. So you're saying that is they. It's no different from the Shaneiqua sentence saying this is she. It's no different from the potent Cabbage God smell. The source was I. That is they. It's a nominative case pronoun because, once again, it's an old-fashioned pattern 3. It's a predicate nominative. And this is one of those times where I wouldn't talk this way, but it's correct to write this way. That's they, that's we, that's he, that's she, that's I. It's odd to say that's they over there because I know our gut says that's them, but to be correct, it's that's they over there. All right, I'll pause and start up a different video for you just to kind of review these and then get into one more type of pronoun for you today.